What can fibromyalgia tell us about pain? We've really, in the last probably 10 or 15 years, really blown wide open an understanding of pain. Pain does not equate to physical injury. Well, if I say that in my clinic, then I very often get a blank look and a startled look. And people either disbelieve me, which is fine, or really it starts to, that does not compute. We know that we don't have to have physical tissue trauma or inflammation in order that we can experience pain. And if there's any doubt about that, and this is not some new woo-woo, if I think about this and I go way back to my early training 35 years ago, I was working with amputees, phantom limb pain. This phenomenon I have worked with and witnessed decades ago. People who still experience pain in the foot that they no longer have, but they still feel the pain of the gangrenous foot or the mangled foot that they once upon a time had, but has now been removed. How is that possible? Well, that tells us that it is not about the damage in the foot. It can't all be. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there isn't some pain which comes from physical tissue trauma. Of course there is. There are chemical responses which take place, but still they are a signal. There are lots and lots of other experiments, the rubber hand experiment, where you can kind of train the person to feel, and you spend time and they'll go, that's crazy. I know in my head that this is a rubber hand and not my own, but actually I can actually feel you doing this, and it feels uncomfortable when you stick a pin in it, and I can feel you stroke it with a feather. My mind knows that it's a piece of rubber, but I can genuinely feel this as you do this. Because that's all pain is a sensation of varying qualities, because we go, well, what is pain like? And pain can be a whole rich array of qualities of experience, from heartache to cutting yourself with a knife to hitting yourself with a hammer and a throbbing inflammatory pain. They are a vast array of experiences. And we just say, well, they're unpleasant experiences, and they get bundled up as pain. But if we can experience heartache, well, that's not necessarily got anything to do with the tissue being inflamed. It's a cramping, it's a tightening, it's a bracing. It's a nervous system experience that sends a signal to us that says, this is not good. So pain is pay attention, I need. A little acronym which I came up with at a conference once. Pay attention, I need something. I need you to pay attention to this. I need your support. So fibromyalgia is a pain felt within the muscular system, but that's all it is. But we know that also that dysregulation also has an effect within the immune system. Now, immune system is nearly always involved in pain, partly because there's an inflammatory response in the body with this dysregulation. So there may be an inflammatory response, but there may not. And when we look at the fact that they have things like fibrofog and they have fatigue with it, as a condition, it's rare for us to ever see pain in isolation without some other kind of process. So think about it, we might feel chest pain if we've got pneumonia, or we've got some other illness. Pain is usually part of something. It's usually part of a signal system to the mind to say, hello, I need you to pay attention. But what we tend to do is run away from that pain. So what? So what about this understanding? Well, we tend to run away from that pain, and we think that it's bad, and if we're not careful and we don't pay attention to it, then what happens is it like a toddler you're not listening to, it just has to shout louder so that you can hear, and the pain may actually increase. But what if we could actually develop a relationship with our pain? Now that sounds like a strange idea, because instantly if you find yourself saying, why would I want to have a relationship with my pain? It's horrible. Yeah. Well, there we are. There's the terrible bind that we find ourselves in with pain, and why we so often end up with chronic pain, because we say, my partner's giving me a hard time right now. Right now, I don't really feel like I want to move closer to them. Yeah? But But we know that if we don't, then actually all that happens is the pain which exists and the tension which exists between the two becomes worse. And so we have to find a way, compassionately, gently, sensitively, to bring those two things together. And can we find a way? And this is where tools, we can't just go diving into the pain, but somatic experiencing and various tools and neuroaffective touch, these tools help us to find safe, supported ways. The fact that we're in a therapeutic alliance and maybe those pains have some emotional components or psycho-emotional components, and that we need to get into a therapeutic process, address the psychological elements, and that might need a very delicate space to do that. Because if we're going to go in contact with pain, we need a lot of support, and we need to find ways to do so delicately. And very often, if things have been too much for us in the past, this is why we dissociate, why we split, and why we just cannot face a relationship with that signal. And so then the signal becomes stronger, and the pain that it's communicating through becomes stronger. So if we look at fibromyalgia and why it doesn't respond in the way that a normal tissue injury might do, and it leads us to an understanding of a richness about pain, about the mind, about the body, about our relationship with our own selves and communication. And so I think there's a lot to be learned and a lot of hope for your healing.